are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Welcome to our June edition of the Kauffman FastTrac Author Series. We are proud to have John Jantsch joining us here in our office here at the Conference Center this morning. And we would like to welcome John. And today he will be discussing his book, Duct Tape Selling. And now I will hand it over to John.
Thanks so much. And welcome. So I'm actually going to focus, I'm not going to talk about the book necessarily. I'm going to focus on a component or maybe one of the key themes in the book. And so the topic today is called Creating the Perfect End-to-End Customer Journey. For those of you that do a little bit of the tweeting and those kinds of things, my handle is at Duct Tape, and hopefully I'll say something that is worthy of being shared with your followers. So a lot of things have really changed over the last few years when it comes to marketing and sales, and we're having a little bit of an issue getting the clicker to work to advance, so maybe I'll have to take that back over. A lot of things have changed over the last few years when it comes to marketing and sales. So I want to go over and set the table really for the rest of the presentation by presenting some of what I call the realities of sales and marketing today, because these really, I think, influence the mindset that we really have to take today in marketing and sales. So the first one, no one talks about boring businesses. I mean, think about your own experience. When's the last time you went on the Facebook and raved about a perfectly satisfying experience you had? We don't do that, and yet getting people to share and to talk about and to refer and to introduce us has now probably become one of the most important elements of success in marketing today. People don't need simply more information. They don't need, necessarily more content. What they need is insight. And I think that now one of the master skills for most of us in marketing sales is to not simply dump information, but to find ways to filter and aggregate and to make that information more useful, because we're drowning in information. Everybody has jumped on the content marketing train now. And so now we have to actually be very intentional about our content, why we're putting it out, how we're putting it out, and how we're making it digestible and consumable. It used to be years ago you could tell a customer, you could make a customer a promise, maybe not necessarily uphold that promise, and then just move on to the next one and go get a next customer and the next customer. Today, pretty much everyone knows when you fail. They immediately go onto Twitter, they go onto Facebook, there are all these review sites. And so we absolutely have to focus on more attention on the customer experience and creating something that people want to talk about in very positive ways, because they are going to talk for good or bad. This one, particularly for salespeople, has gotten rather difficult. I actually sit in my office all day without a phone on my desk, and doors are much harder now to knock down, because we want to go out there and we want to find the products and services that we need to solve our problems and challenges. We don't necessarily want people calling us. I mean, do we wake up every day and say, I hope I get 3 or 4 sales calls today? Probably not. But we do have 3 or 4 or 5 things that maybe we need to acquire through a salesperson or through a company, but we now want to take charge of actually how that journey starts, and in many cases how it ends. Trust has always been essential, but I think, again, because people have the ability to publish, because they know when you fail, because they talk about it and they share, you have to understand that your trust that you earn with the customer is always on trial. And again, I think that this really goes back to that need to not only think about making a sale, but thinking about an outcome and thinking about an experience and thinking about that customer, long past the sale. What do they need? What does that experience need to look like for them? But more than anything else, sales and marketing has changed because buying has changed. Again, I think most of us can use our own experience about how we go out now and find a product. There was a recent CEB study, and this was actually happened to be 2,200 B2B buyers, who said that 57% of them said that the typical purchase decision that they make is really made before they even talk to a supplier. So you imagine the implication of that, right? In many cases, if they're not finding us when they're going out there and doing that search or on that journey, then we're not even going to get invited to the dance. For a lot of marketers, this is how they've solved that problem, right? If we need to be found, we just need more content. And I want to suggest that while content is and probably always will be an essential element of this customer journey, more is not always the answer. The funnel, the marketing and sales funnel that so many organizations for years and schools still teach this idea, I think is fundamentally broken. The idea that you line people up, give them content, when they score high enough, you throw them over the wall to the sales team. The sales team closes the deal, and then they move them over to the service team, and voila, we have a loyal customer. I think that approach is fundamentally broken. When it comes to lead and referral generation, a happy customer is your best tool. In fact, if we can focus more attention on creating happy or thrilled customers through a remarkable experience, we'll never have to lead generate again. So this idea of funneling people in this linear path, I believe, no longer applies. Quite frankly, I believe that the customer journey today looks a lot more like this. And that in many cases, or in many ways, how people come to find our products and services are greatly out of our control. In fact, many of the ways in which companies or which buyers go about building trust and finding solutions, we no longer are even aware of. And so we have to change our focus dramatically. And that the other component of that CEB study that I think really lends so much to this idea of a complete end-to-end journey is that 53% of those same people who were surveyed claimed that the sales experience itself was one of the greatest contributing factors in continued loyalty to the brand. So can you see how those two thoughts are completely set up in opposition of each other? People are going out and finding the companies. They don't want to talk to a salesperson. They want to actually go down that path, make the decision, or at least fundamentally make the decision about the product or service that they're going to buy, but then that sales experience is what actually keeps them with that company. It might just be the customer experience. The service experience is what really contributes to them being a loyal customer. So you can't have one without the other. In fact, I think there's a lot of organizations out there they're suggesting maybe the sales function isn't necessary anymore in business. And what I'm going to suggest is that it's probably more necessary than ever, but how we approach it has to change. I think the future of marketing is less about demand creation and more about organizing behavior. And that is this idea of organizing behavior is key to the idea of creating a customer journey. I think that ends up mine. No, that's all right. It just would not have to work. So here's what I mean by organizing behavior. I'm going to introduce this concept that I call the marketing and sales hourglass. I believe that there are 7 behaviors that people want to engage in with the companies or the products or services that they buy and engage. Those 7 behaviors are know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. I believe that obviously, we all need to come to know about companies that can solve our problems, make our life better. Certainly, we want to know, we want to come to like or at least respect that company. We certainly want to know that other people do, that we've seen successes. We want to be able to trust that company. I don't think anybody wants to buy from somebody or a company that they don't fully trust. I think it's very helpful that we have the ability to try, to allow an organization to kind of prove that they do what they say so that they can win our loyalty. I believe that we all want the buying experience to be just as high as everything that kind of led us up there to making that decision. And I don't know about you, but if I find a company or a product or service that meets my need and I have that need again, I love that I can check that off the list and go back to that same company knowing that they're going to take my need or take care of me in the same way. And I think as human beings, we're all actually wired to talk about great experiences, to introduce other people to companies that exceed our expectation or surprise us. And so ultimately, I believe that most human beings like to refer other companies and other businesses. And so our job really as marketers and sales, and of course we need to throw service in here, is to really create a business or create touch points in our business that will allow us to guide people on this customer journey. But I think more than anything else, we have to change our thinking and not consider it maybe a marketing department and a sales department and a service department, but think about it as our entire business as a relationship department or a profit department or an outcome department, whatever name you want to give to it. But we have to create this end-to-end journey. There can no longer be the separation of these functions. I want to give you the way that I view this in another sense. My definition of marketing is actually getting someone who has a need to know, like, and trust you. But then we have to turn know, like, and trust into try, buy, repeat, and refer. And to me, that's the definition of sales or sales and service. And so if you look at this kind of end-to-end journey as really walking people down this path to each of these stages or however you want to refer to them, then that's really, I believe that that's how to fundamentally look at your, globally at least, at your marketing in your organizations. Some things have changed when it comes to then applying this idea of organizing behavior. That listening now is the new prospecting. Teaching is the new presenting. Providing insight over just sharing information. Helping organizations build stories around where they want to go is the new nurturing. And network building is really the new closing. Many of you have probably seen that iconic scene, Alec Baldwin, where he berates all the people, the ABCs of selling, always be closing. Well, now I think it's always be connecting is really the ABCs of sales. So how do you do this? How do you use this as a way to change, how you're going to go to the market, both from a sales standpoint and really from a marketing standpoint? And there are really three components to this that I'm going to go over really for the balance of today's presentation. You have to think in terms of building personal brand authority. Now, personal can be you, one person as a salesperson. It can be the business brand authority. But we have to think in terms of a very systematic approach to this. And so the 4 points are, you do have to have a point of view. One of the things that makes it difficult for people to build any kind of authority or to stand out is that quite often we want to be like everybody else in our industry. We don't necessarily want to be that, but we default to that by copying kind of their message and their packaging and their branding and using the exact same phrases and terminology. In fact, I'll give some of you an exercise if you want to test this out. Go to your website, copy the first paragraph off, and then put it on a Word doc or something, and then go to your 3, 4, 5 top competitors and do the same thing. Then there's a little tool in Word that allows you to actually black out any reference to black out any reference to a name of a company that would identify one of those companies, and then pass it around your office and see if anybody can actually tell one from another. In fact, I've had business owners that do this, and as soon as they black out the names, they actually can't even remember which one's their website. And I think what it really highlights is that in many cases, not necessarily intentionally, but in many cases, we're all saying exactly the same thing. And if you want to stand out, you have to have a specific point of view. You have to have a point of differentiation. You have to have a methodology. You have to have an innovation where you're bringing whatever it is that you do in a way that nobody else in your industry is, and that becomes really the basis for everything that you're going to promote after that. And I'm going to talk about each of these remaining points. Then you have to build this marketing hourglass that I've talked about. Content is really going to power that hourglass, and then connection is really going to be the tool that allows you to amplify your personal brand authority. So let's talk about this in practical sense. Hopefully the concept of the marketing hourglass is starting to make sense to you, but let's talk about it in practical sense. How do you bring this into your business? So if we look at each of those stages, and quite frankly, when we go in and work with organizations, this is how we'll approach it. So you look at each of those stages and just ask yourself, how do people come to know us? What makes them, once they come to know us, want to go farther, want to know more, like us? What are we doing so that as that person's checking us out and finding out more about us, that we're building trust? What are we offering that allows them to try us? Things like workshops and evaluations and demos. What are we doing once somebody buys that keeps that experience high? How are we orienting them? How are they introduced to the service team? After somebody buys, what are we doing to make sure that they got the results that we promised? Are we measuring the outcomes that we promised? Are we looking for opportunities to add more value? Are we bringing them together and building community around our customer base? And finally, what are we doing so that we are focused on getting 100% of the people that come to know us also wanting to refer us? How are we building what I call champion teams and champion events? And what are we doing to develop strategic partner relationships? So this is just a really quick example of how you would actually go through your business and say, okay, what are all the touch points? What are all the processes? What are all the campaigns that we have created to deliberately move people through these steps? And quite often, what people want to do is run an ad. They want somebody to get to know them, or a referral comes in, and they immediately want to jump to the buy stage. We want to sell them something. And if you skip those steps of like, trust, and try, what happens is they don't fully understand how you're going to get them the result. They can't come to appreciate why you're different. They can't come to understand why you charge a premium for what you do. And so it's very dangerous. Many people want to get to that sale. But in many cases, as you build out your marketing hourglass, you want to be very intentional about how you educate and move people through these steps, because that's how you get the ideal client that truly understands the value that you can deliver. And if you skip those steps, that's where you get that client that you can't serve, that had different expectations, that came there because they were looking for something different than what you actually offer. So homework again would just be to go through your business and say, okay, in marketing, what are the touch points? In sales, what are the current touch points? Whatever your terminology is, enrollment, service, education, follow-up, even finance. What are the touch points? Because anytime, any way, shape, and form in which your business is coming into contact with a customer or a prospect, you're performing a marketing function. So in many cases, what you'll find is that you have, some touch points that maybe aren't necessarily very customer friendly. They're set up, a lot of finance, probably you can pick on the finance people out there, a lot of finance processes are set up for efficiency and not necessarily set up to create a great customer experience. So what are all your current touch points, and how do they actually impact your customer? And what I typically find is, in addition to the fact that maybe you have some that aren't so customer friendly, you have huge gaps. For example, one of my the most prominent gaps that I find quite often is when somebody says yes, I'm ready to buy. That there's this sort of letdown afterwards because there's no orientation, there's no setting the expectations correctly, there's no smooth handoff to whoever is going to actually do the work, and those are very, very important touch points. So, and this is not intended for you to read this screen as much as to demonstrate. This is an example of a type of marketing hourglass roadmap that we create with and for our customers that really says, okay, these are the stages. Now, what are the customer's goals here? What are the touch points? What are the customer's questions that they're going to have at this point? And this kind of document, first off, it really underpins how important this element of a journey is, but it also then allows us to build it into every aspect of the business. Quite frankly, in most cases, we build these stages into a CRM system. But it also really allows us to then say, okay, if these are the questions or if these are the expectations a customer has at this stage, what do we need to build in order to answer those questions and to fulfill really those expectations? So content, as some of you may have started to guess, is really what powers the hourglass. It powers our connection. Now, one of the things that is a real struggle with a lot of business owners, and this, a lot of the angst lately in marketing is around this idea that every single person that you're talking to in marketing is telling you have to produce content. And organizations pretty quickly, even if they grasp that, pretty quickly realize that, hey, that's a lot of work. And I think that a lot of that stems from the approach that they give to this. If we're going to say that this needs to be a very strategic part of your business, beyond marketing even, then we have to really look at it that way. And I think what a lot of people have a tendency to do is to think about marketing as, okay, they say we need to create more marketing, so let's put up a blog and somebody write a blog post once a week. And so that person wakes up on Monday and says, oh gosh, what should I write about? Well, you quickly find that that doesn't scale very well. It certainly doesn't provide much value in terms of building an asset that content needs to be for powering this marketing hourglass journey. The key is to look at the content that you're producing with specific intentions in mind. And I think that's the part that a lot of people miss. They just think in terms of, well, we need more content. Well, what you need is content that creates awareness. You need content that is specifically designed to build trust. You need content that educates so that when that person is actually out there saying, okay, how would this work for me? You need content that actually really engages your prospects and customers. And finally, you do need content that is specifically created to convert a prospect into a customer. So some of these areas for awareness, certainly blog posts and events and advertising, for a lot of people, that's the type of content that actually makes somebody initially maybe aware of what you do or aware of your products and services. So a lot of times people say, oh, blogs are dead, or I don't need a blog because nobody wants to read my blog. All of those actually may be true if you're thinking in terms of being a blogger. But what you are is a content producer writing blog posts that answers the questions that you know your market has, that provides information that demonstrates your expertise, and that is exactly the kind of content that people are going out there by the millions every single day searching for online and finding blog posts. Even if you are sitting there behind your computer today saying, well, I don't read blogs, my guess is that in the last day or two, if you did a search for anything online, you probably read a blog post, or you certainly were at least exposed to half a dozen blog posts in that search. Content that builds trust. So your how-to content that really shows me how to do something is a great way to build trust. Obviously, reviews, testimonials, articles that you're able to place in other blogs or in third-party print publications are all great ways to produce content, to think about producing content that builds trust. Content that educates, ebooks, newsletters, workshops, demonstrations, FAQs, any kind of survey data that you can turn into to content is the kind of content that people are going out there searching for. Once you start building trust with them, it's the kind of content that really they are inviting you to teach them now, how would your product or service or solution work for me? One of my favorites is, and probably one of the more underutilized forms of content, is customer content. So creating opportunities where you can capture success stories, you can give your customers motivation to share their images or their stories in social networks and places where they hang out. Other people's content. I mentioned that idea that we don't need more information necessarily. I have a lot of salespeople that I've been coaching on just finding ways to go out there and actually aggregate a whole bunch of content that might be important to a prospect or a customer, and then to just be able to package it or curate that content in a way that they can share it. So they're not actually producing any net new content. They're just sharing other people's content in a way that makes it much more relevant for their customers. So, for example, they have a customer that is in a certain industry, or they have a customer that has a certain challenge, that they're actually using a lot of these tools now to unearth that content that's specifically related to that challenge. And they're actually able to package that and personalize that for a prospect without writing any really new content. Content that converts, your in-person events, case studies, contests, ROI calculators, results reviews, or at least demonstrating somebody else's results. These are all forms of content that you need to have to actually sell in today's environment. And then probably one that people don't even think about, and I think it's a really powerful one, is that once you start producing great content, ebooks, workshops, even blog posts that people find very valuable, once you get into that rhythm, you can take that content and use it as a powerful lead generator by way of referrals. And what I mean by that is you can now go out and start tapping somebody else's audience, somebody else's readership, by offering to write blog posts, guest blog posts, for example, by taking that killer ebook that you've produced and going out to a strategic partner and saying, hey, we find a lot of people really love this. They download it by the thousands. We'd like to let you send it out to your customer list. You can actually co-brand it, put your your logo, your branding information on it, and share it freely. We'd love for you to do that. You can do the same thing, of course, with a workshop. Go to that. If you've produced a workshop that has a lot of value, that really educates people, go out to a strategic partner and say, hey, we'd like to do that for your customers. So you can take the content that you're producing for your own efforts and allow other people, give them the opportunity, package it up for them, give them the opportunity to share it with their community, and all of a sudden your content that you're producing really has some strong ROI. We actually work with organizations, and most of the organizations we work with, creating what we call a total content system. As I mentioned, you can't just think about this as what shall I write next week. This content is such an important element of this customer journey that you have to think really like a publisher. You have to create an editorial view of all the content that you're producing. So what we do is we typically work with organizations to create a list of what we call monthly landmark content themes, so that every month they have a theme that's generally drawn from an important element of their business or important keyword phrase that people might go out there and be searching for, knowing that if we produce a lot of content around that in each month, that content will build and become an asset for us long term. Then we want to figure out how we're going to get that content out there. You hear a lot of people talk about content is king. Well, distribution is actually, I've heard people refer to as the queen, and in some cases she wears the pants. I mean, that distribution without that, your content is not really going to thrive and grow and be shared. But finally, then we want to think in terms of how we're going to integrate all of this content with our core business objectives. And I think that's where a lot of people, the disconnect is a lot of times, is that they're just thinking about words as opposed to objectives. So again, a total content plan might look something like this, much more like an editorial calendar, where the themes are for each month are across the top. Where we're going to actually put that from a platform standpoint goes down the side column. And what this allows you to do, certainly we do this, and we see this with all the clients that we work with, what this approach allows you to do is start looking out into the future. And now all of a sudden we can start planning, we can start delegating, we can start getting help, we can start determining, hey, if we want to talk about lead conversion, for example, in October, who would be a great guest for that? And we can start thinking about that now. And a great deal of what this does is it actually makes it easier for somebody inside our business or even a third-party outside resource to start really lending a hand into this entire important category of marketing. So then the last piece of this is the connection journey. How are we going to connect with our market in a way that allows us to guide them on this journey, and certainly in a way to allow us to really use a lot of this content that we've been producing. And for many, many businesses today, I would say, in fact, most, a lot of this connection is actually powered by what's going on online in social media and in social networks. But here again, I see many people take the wrong approach. A lot of times when I'll go out and speak, the first question I get is, should I be on Facebook? Should I be on Twitter? And as far as I'm concerned, that is absolutely the wrong question. I could probably make a case for most any social network having value, but the question should be what is my intention for being in any of these places? And I believe that there are, again, 5 elements to connection that you need to think about intentionally as a way and a reason for how you would participate in any of these networks before you ever start thinking about, should I be on Twitter or should I be on Facebook? And in this particular case, I believe there's also a hierarchy to how you would participate in these. So these 5 elements: collect, curate, create, share, and engage. So collect is really your listening component. Collecting the information out there, listening to your network, finding out who's connected to whom is an essential element. And quite frankly, for some percentage of you on the call, and I know this because of all the audiences I speak to, if you would actually just master that component, you would get far greater return on your time spent in social media than you probably are today. The second component, curate. There's so many incredible tools out there that allow you to now take content, some of your own and some of other people's, and actually personalize that content, filter that content, aggregate it, and make it more useful for your market. That's one of the ways that that I think salespeople today certainly and really marketers can make themselves more valuable to their customers and to their prospects is by really thinking about how to package and repackage information. We do have to, I believe, create new content every day, but I think that we need to think about, what are the ways that we can create content that people want to share? What are the ways that we can repurpose content and put it into other formats? Fourth component here is sharing. Sharing has actually become an extremely important marketing function, and I think a lot of people underestimate the power of this. And by that, I simply mean that we need to be collecting other people's content and sharing that in social networks. That has become probably one of the most powerful ways to actually get links back to your content, which is still a very strong currency in terms of search engine optimization. So getting in the habit of not only sharing your own content and amplifying your own content, but finding other people's content that your readers or that your customers would find value in, and getting in the habit of sharing that. The reason I say that's one of the greatest ways to draw links is because you're sharing other people's content, but you're giving them full attribution. You're actually sending them traffic. And in my experience, those people tend to reciprocate, just if nothing else, out of curiosity. Who is this company sending me traffic or linking to my content? And in many cases, that's how you start building relationships with potential strategic partners, potential guest posting opportunities. But in many cases, they will also start linking to your content. And then finally, social media. I actually stand up in front of audiences at social media conferences and marketing conferences and tell them that I think in many cases marketing is actually ruining the social media for a lot of people because they are looking at it as another broadcast channel as opposed to a really powerful tool to engage maybe a small group of prospects or a small group of customers. In fact, I often say that when people are trying to pin me down on, should I join this new network or what do you think about this new tool, that I'll also tell them, I will often tell them, look at your existing customer base and ask yourself, how can I use this tool? Don't worry about how everybody else is using it. How can I use this tool to better serve my existing customer base? If you can answer that question, or if you can find a way that will be valuable to your customers, then that tool will be valuable to you. So I'll go through a couple of the tools that I use. Those of you that are paying attention to the screen have seen all these names underneath these things that I have here. These are all tools, and many of you, if you haven't taken a screenshot of it or not, maybe you've jotted some of these down. But these are all tools that you should check out. There are hundreds and hundreds of other tools, but these happen to be the ones that I use and typically recommend. And I'll go through a couple of them. When it comes to this idea of collecting, to listening, it's absolutely essential that you create a list or Twitter list of your customers. I would go as far as saying also your competitors, key journalists, maybe influential people in your industry as well, because it makes it very easy to then use a tool like Hootsuite to just watch everything that's going on with your customers. You may follow 10,000 people for whatever reason in Twitter, but you know that if your customer's saying something, you probably should be paying attention to that. You can create alerts for your customers, for journalists, for competitors, and using a tool like TalkWalker, and then once a day you will get an email alert that says, hey, this journalist has written something new, or your customer just put out a press release, or your competitor just put out a press release. There are blog aggregating sites that will take some of the hard work of you finding influential people in a specific industry. Tools like Alltop are a great place to look for that. And in many cases, you may want to follow people that are influential in your own industry, but in a lot of cases you have maybe clients that are in industries that you don't know that much about, and following and reading some of the key influential people in those industries can make you more valuable to your customers or to your prospects, but they can also give you some great things to share with those folks. There's a fairly new tool called Rival IQ that produces really stunning looking reports on really what your competitors are doing in social media. If you're looking for topics to write about because you run out of ideas, I love to use these question and answer sites. One of my favorites is called Quora. You can go and search for a specific industry. You can actually even subscribe to a specific industry topic and you can then find, what are the questions that people in that industry are asking? What are the questions people in my industry are asking? I know people that go there and they mine those sites, and then they take and they answer those same questions in the form of blog posts, because they know that that's information that people want an answer to, that there are people out there searching. Using a tool like Feedly, I subscribe to a couple hundred blogs probably, and what Feedly does is it brings all of the blog content to one page and categorizes it for me so that I can scan, and of course almost all of these tools have mobile apps that go along with them, so I can just actually scan the content on a daily basis, or take 10, 15 minutes to do so. So my collection toolbox is Hootsuite, Feedly, TalkWalker, and there's another tool, a social bookmarking tool I use all the time called Digo. And so what that allows me to do is, if I'm out there searching the web and maybe I'm getting ready to write a blog post on a certain topic, or I want to create a course on a certain topic, and I go and I find everything everybody else is writing about on that topic, and I give it a tag, for maybe the name of my new course, and then I can go back there when it comes time for me to want to write that. I've got this handy library then of all of the content that I've bookmarked as I've been searching around. So this is just a quick shot of, many of you are probably users of Hootsuite, but this is a quick shot of my of a small part of my Hootsuite dashboard, and you can see it just shows mentions of me, of my books across the top. You also see, if you look at those tabs, you can bring Google Plus and Facebook and LinkedIn all into this dashboard as well. So this really kind of becomes the one place where you can really run all of your social media. I mean, I can post from here to any of those networks. I can post all of them at one time if I want. I can engage anybody that, let's say I have a list of customers here, I could actually quickly respond to or retweet their content or share their content. So it really becomes the dashboard that I use to run social media inside my organization. In terms of curation, Scoop It, Newsel, and Feedly are some great tools for curation. And so here's an example. This is a Scoop It page. Anybody who has a Scoop It account can just create as many topics as they want. And then Scoop It will actually recommend content, but you can put your own content in here. You can go out and find other great content. And basically what you're doing is building magazine style pages that can be on any topic that you designate. And what we do quite often is have clients that will build these, and then they will look at across their customer base and say, okay, we need to create customer-focused content that has to. We can actually create a newsletter specific to every single one of our prospects. We can do it to every one of their industries. And it takes a little bit of time if you're going to go to that granular level. But think about what a service that is that you might be able to provide by just curating other people's content and then packaging it in a way that you can share with your customers and prospects. In terms of creating content, you have to go beyond thinking about just the word content or text content. Obviously, video and visual content has become extremely important. Some tools like WordSwag and Canva are great for that. Listly is a great tool for creating and curating lists, and then visually is increasingly data visualization has become extremely important. So just taking content, taking spreadsheet data and actually turning it into pictures has become a great way to create content that people want to share. And I think that that's one of the challenges, is that it's no longer enough to just create great content that people want to read. We now have to think in terms of producing content people want to share. So these are just a couple examples of visual content that these were produced with WordSwag. It took about 2 minutes, and then I can post those to social networks. This is an example of creating lists that I can embed, say, in my blog post. So this is using that Listly tool. In terms of sharing, my toolbox really for sharing, as I mentioned, I believe that most businesses should get in the habit of sharing 10 to 15 pieces of content every day. So obviously I unearth a lot of that content using Hootsuite or Feedly, but there's also another great tool that maybe some of you are familiar with that I use every day called Buffer. So let's say because it's extremely important, I think, that if you're going to participate in all of this social media stuff, it's extremely important that you can create tools that allow you to be as efficient as possible in doing this, because most of you probably on this call don't have all day to do some of the things that I'm talking about every day. And so what Buffer does is, let's say I go to my Feedly feeds in the morning and I find 12 pieces of content that I want to share. I push them all to Buffer, and then Buffer puts them in Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and other places where I share content throughout the day. It buffers them out throughout the day, and so allows me to, in 5 minutes, really do all of my sharing, but know that it won't just be bombarding people all in that 5-minute period. And the last piece of this really then is engagement. And if you're not using tools that automatically bring in all of your customers' social media activity and your prospects' social media activity, you are really missing out on kind of the rich vein of content that really will teach you how to sell them better, will teach you how to go deeper into their organizations, will teach you how to connect them to other people that can help them. If nothing else, will teach you what they care about, what they do in their spare time, all great things that are shared publicly that are great bits of information if we want to build deeper relationships and serve our clients. So the CRM systems, I mean, everything from Salesforce to maybe some smaller ones like Batchbook and Hatchbook now have that functionality where you can pull up a customer's record and you'll see what they've been talking about on Facebook and on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Participating in or maybe even creating groups in LinkedIn and Facebook to bring your customers together is another great way to engage. Using tools like Contextually, which is a CRM system that's built really around bringing in people's social information, but also helping you understand how to build deeper relationships with them. It actually has settings that will prompt you if you haven't talked to a customer or you haven't engaged a customer in social media or otherwise in email for a set period of time. And even to something as simple as a browser plugin like Reportive, which actually allows you to just, if you use Gmail, actually allows you to bring up your email. Somebody sends you an email, down the right sidebar now you'll see their contact information, maybe who they are, but then also some of their social network activity. So there's so many great tools now that you can plug in and employ to make yourself smarter really on the fly when it comes to your customers and ways in which you might engage them. We have to think about socially surrounding our markets, our prospects, our customers. And I don't mean that in an evil way in any way, shape, or form, but that we need to be bringing in, we need to be using that information that they're sharing willingly to make ourselves smarter. We need to go deeper in social networks. So not just use LinkedIn as a tool to find who works at a certain company or who might be a prospect, but to build entire stakeholder maps in an organization. Find out who our prospects and customers are influenced by. Find out actually who in our network we might be able to connect them to. We need to think in terms of creating custom content. We certainly need to subscribe to and join. I mean, many of our customers and prospects now are putting out tons of information. How much of that have you subscribed to? How many of their events are you joining and paying attention to? And I think more than anything else, instead of reaching out to people in social networks and social media and pitching them, now think in terms of connecting them. So one of the greatest reasons to build your own really strong network is that you can actually introduce those people in your network to your customers, to your prospects. And I can't tell you how many times I have had actually a salesperson deliver value by introducing me to somebody before they really ever start introducing their products or services. And I think that's how we have to think about this concept of really socially surrounding. One of your key things, whether you're a marketer or a salesperson, is that you have to get involved in the customer's journey at a much earlier point than I suspect in many cases we are, because those 57% of those people that are out there making a decision about a purchase before they ever contact the company, we have to get involved in their journey before we get eliminated, quite frankly, because they picked somebody else. And the way you do that is by making connections and building relationships before you ever start trying to sell. So your social media connection plan would look very much like the plans that I showed you in the other categories. And so by elevating this intentional approach to the strategic level, I believe that you give it the importance that it's going to require if you're going to actually get the return on investment that I know we all desperately want. The last piece of the puzzle is to make sure that you are completing the sales process. I think a great way to look at sales is that a sale is not a sale until the customer gets a result. Quite often, I think a lot of times we end the sales process at, okay, thanks, here's, I'll sign the contract. We need to think in terms of, what is the next step? How do we continue to nurture? What's the transaction? How do we make sure that the transaction itself is an incredibly remarkable experience and that actually exceeds their expectations? And finally, we need to be thinking in terms of every single customer engagement. How are we going back and measuring the results and making sure that they got the outcome that we promised? I often tell salespeople they need to look at themselves at that point as the customer advocate. That in many cases, if their long-term reputation really is staked on the fact that they saw the sale through, they made sure that somebody got the result, and that's at that point is where they are getting the most referrals. So as a reminder, the future of marketing is less about demand creation and more about organizing behavior. You have to go about organizing behavior of know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. We need to think about building relationships departments, profit departments, and outcome departments. And I think we're going to go to questions, and the last slide on there that's where you can contact me. And if you want to talk about this, you want to learn about actually how we build these journeys for businesses, feel free to reach out. So I think we're going to go some questions now.
We do have some questions. Yes, thank you very much for bringing in and asking these questions. Several of you have asked if we're going to be providing a copy of the PowerPoint, and this webinar is being recorded, so it will be available out on our author series landing page by we're looking at by the end of the day tomorrow, and we'll also include, John's agreed to let us also include a link to the PowerPoint as well. So there's my first question.
All right, great.
Can a link to the CEB study be provided?
Oh, yes, I'm sure it is. It's actually on their site. It used to be called the Conference Executive Board, and you'll also find. I'll give you another tip on a book to read. There is a book called The Challenger Sale by Matthew Dixon, and actually that book contains a great deal of that. Matthew actually did that research. Quite frankly, my recommendation. I know that they have bits and pieces of that research on their site at CEB, but I would recommend you, if you're really interested in that, spend the $20 and get Matthew's book. It's a great book as well, called The Challenger Sale.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, John, could you take us through the flow chart that you said was a preferred way of viewing the buying decision early in your presentation?
So is the question asking me to go back to a slide?
I believe this question came in as you were going through that slide. The preferred way of viewing buying decision early in your presentation. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, maybe you could give us some more clarification on that. Let's go to another question and maybe get a little more clarification.
The significance of the hourglass metaphor.
Yeah, so it borrows, obviously. So the question was, what is the significance of the hourglass metaphor? It borrows heavily from the funnel. Sorry, in shape, in that there is still that idea of guiding people. Not everybody who comes to know you is going to be the right person, right? And so it is kind of guiding them, educating them through that point where they're perhaps ready to buy. The significance, in my opinion, that we place is that for a lot of organizations, the funnel, they basically just drop out of that small end and good luck. And what we suggest then is that's a place where that, if you envision the hourglass shape, that's the point where it starts to get big again. And that we actually spend maybe more, or start investing more of our time and energy on conversion and on customer experience at that point, because that is actually what is going to then fill up the lead generation pipeline in a way that that focus just on the funnel does not.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Cold calling. I have someone here ask, do you still make phone calls?
I have never been a fan of cold calling. I think it's abusive to both parties, both the person making the call and to the person receiving the call. And a lot of that is because there are ways to do it in which we don't have to do that anymore today. I think that if we can use, it used to be that people would dial, and I still get these calls. I still get people leaving messages that say, I don't really know what you guys do down there, but I'd like to come spend 30 minutes and see if there's any synergies or something of that nature. And it just floors me, because you can know pretty much everything a person would want to know, and probably more about my business in about 5 minutes. And so we can connect with people in places where they hang out now. We didn't have that kind of access before, but we can connect with somebody in LinkedIn. We can start answering questions that people are leaving in LinkedIn, and start building a relationship that really gives us permission then to start talking about how we might be able to solve their needs and challenges. And so, I just think it's a horrible waste of time. And in some ways, where it's really negative is if you truly are cold calling, meaning that you don't really know much about that organization, how do you know that's something you really want to work with? And I think the mentality that a sale is a sale is probably, for most entrepreneurs, for most businesses, is a really bad way to look at the market.
Thank you. Next question, like, try, trust. I know these steps are not able to be skipped, but can they be interchanged?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is no necessarily hard line in what is, there's a lot of crossover. So yes, there can be some interchanging. You can actually accomplish, I have many instances in which I will actually go out and speak. And that may be the first time somebody has been exposed to me. I was in Washington, D.C. last week, spoke to a large group. That was the first time many of them had heard me speak or had heard of me at all. During that presentation, I believe that some of them came to like me and trusted that I knew what I was talking about, and we're actually going to start working with a very large organization starting in the next couple of weeks because of that. So effectively, that was a place where an occasion where I was actually able to do know, like, trust in a way they got to try, because they saw what we were going to build, for other organizations, or what we had built for other organizations, and buy. So in the course of one afternoon or one evening, we were actually able to move through a number of those stages at once. So yes, there's not always a hard and fast line, but I think that thinking at least about these stages and their existence as you build not only your overall business and marketing journey, but let's say you launch a new product. We quite often will work with organizations that they have a new product, and the first thing they want to think about is, okay, what's the ad copy going to be, or what's the email copy going to be to launch this and sell this? And we'll actually flip it around and say, I have a better question. What do you want the customer thinking, feeling, doing 120 days after they buy your product, 90 days, at the time they buy it, and really kind of work backwards through those stages, just as we're applying that same framework to an actual new product launch. And it's a really, really powerful way to start looking at pretty much everything you do in your business. We have people, I don't want to belabor this question, but I love this topic, of course. We have people that use this framework internally. So let's say the boss comes down and says to the IT department, we need put in a new CRM system. No, the salespeople aren't using the current one. So instead of the IT people just saying, okay, you idiots, listen up, we're putting in a new CRM system and everybody's going to use it, they actually start thinking in terms of, how can we get people to know about this? How can we get them to like it? How can we develop some trust? Could we create some trial users that could be champions to really talk to everyone else about? So think everything you do in your business can be approached kind of from this marketing framework. So I think, do we have time for one more?
Yes. Again, somebody thanking us for the roadmap and asking for the hourglass slide. Those will be provided in the PowerPoint.
And I'll also just tell you, people, that this topic is very, and want to go deeper, just even on our site at Duct Tape Marketing, we have a tab called Free eBooks, and I've written about a 30-page dissertation on just this topic alone, the hourglass topic, and you might find some other ones there. And those, it's just ducttapemarketing.com, and they're free to go get them.
Right. Okay, so we'll take the last question here. Could you mention, I guess you had made a reference.
Yes.
To
so somebody had asked about the CEV study. His name is Matthew Dixon, and the book that he wrote is called The Challenger Sale.
Okay. John, thank you again for joining us here in our office today. Your insight was very, very valuable, and we look forward to getting this information up on our website very, very soon. I would also like to invite our audience to attend our next Kauffman FastTrac Author Series, which will be July 16th, when we will welcome Donna Child, who will present Prepare for the Worst, Plan for the Best. Thank you very much.